Hello everyone. In today's session, we'll see pointer concepts in C. So we'll see how to illustrate pointers. So I'll be sharing the screen on which I'll be executing certain code snippets to illustrate pointers in C. To begin with, what do you mean by pointers? So pointers are actually the variables used for storing address. So these are variables used for storing address. So pointers are variables which can hold address. That is the address of the memory location where some data is being stored. Okay. So starting with how to declare variables, we'll start and then we'll see how to declare pointer variables. If I have to declare a normal variable, I'll be declaring int n is equal to 7. So this is a line which tells that there is a variable called n whose data type is integer and who's been given a default value of 7, a static initialization. So there are few things which we know, that is the name, value, and we also know size in this particular line. What do you mean by size is what's the size of this variable, means how much size is required for this particular variable to be stored in your memory location. With this particular keyword integer, we can predict what is the size of this particular variable n in the memory location. And if we know which kind of machine architecture which we are using, since n is an integer and we are talking with respect to 16-bit machine, the size of the memory location required for storing the values in this particular variable n is 2 bytes. But the thing which we don't know is address. In this particular line, we don't know what is the address or where is it this particular n being placed in our memory. And this is not in our control. Address is actually given by operating system. So your OS is responsible for memory management. But other three factors, name, value, and size, we can actually come to know through this particular line, which is done initialization along with the declaration. So size, it's dependent on this particular keyword, integer, 16-bit machine takes 2 bytes, float takes 4 bytes, double takes 8 bytes, character takes 1 byte. And then value. Value is what value we have been initialized to that particular variable. And then size, as I said, it depends on the keyword. And then name. So when we say that we want 2 bytes of space for an integer variable, then what is the name of that particular memory location to be given as? So that is particularly given as n here. We call it as a variable name, or we use identifiers for naming the variables. Clear? Okay. So name, we usually tell it as variable name, and it's an identifier. And it's an identifier. Okay. Now we'll see how actually we can access this particular variable. So if I want to display the value of n, I'll be telling value of n. Since it is an integer, we use the format specifier %d. I'll use \n so that my next line of the print statement comes in a separate line with a line inserted because of \n. And then the value which I'm going to print, that is of n. Okay. So when I execute this particular line, what it does is it prints this textual data value of n colon, and when I get %d, it searches in the argument list. So in argument list, we have given name. So it uses this name to search the memory locations, means which memory location is having a name n. And when we find the name n in that particular memory location, it gets the value of it and displays in the screen. So when I run this particular program, okay, as you can see here, the value is being displayed. Now let us find out what's the address of that particular variable n. So I'll use the same sentence. Instead of value, we are going to print the address of n. So what's the address of n? So to print the address, usually your addresses in your memory location are in the form of hexadecimal values. So I can use x. And since it is a pointer, when I tell about address, it's actually a pointer. Pointer is actually a place where you can store the address. So you can also use another format specifier, that is %p. So we'll be using both of them. First, we'll see with percentage X, and we use address operator to get the address of n. And you know that ampersand is used as an address operator. So I have utilized an address operator to get the address of my variable n. So your ampersand is called as an address operator. Okay. Now when I run this particular program, I'll get the address of n. Can you see here? It is an hexadecimal value. How do we know it is an hexadecimal value? Why? Because we have in hexadecimal the alphabets A to F, which has been utilized. A stands for 10, B stands for 11, C stands for 12. So this is a way how we can actually identify it's an hexadecimal value. And since I've used a small x here, that's why your A, B, C, D, the alphabets which are used in hexadecimal comes in a lowercase. Instead of small x, if I would have used capital X, and if I run this particular program, you can see here, I've got alphabets in capital letter. If you could clearly notice, in the previous output, the address was different, and then this current output, the address is different. Because each time when I run a program, the computer finds a new place for my variable. And then when I stop running my program, automatically the place is removed. It's erased. And this process, we call it as garbage collection. So all these jobs are actually taken care by your operating system, which just does a major job of allocating memory to you and removing or freeing the memory after you have been successfully utilized it. So each time you run a program, you can see different addresses where actually your variable n is placed. So I was talking about capital X. Capital X makes all your alphabets which are used from A to F come in capital case, that is uppercase. Okay, we'll use lowercase only as I'm comfortable with lowercase. So we'll use lowercase only so that our output comes in lowercase. Okay. So I was telling about percentage P. We'll see how percentage P also works in printing the address. So instead of percentage X, I can use percentage P. Same answer we will get, but only thing is that it will indicate that it is an hexadecimal value by appending 0x in the front and then padding the unused place with F. So we'll run and we'll see. As you can see here, in the previous percentage X, what we used, it is 6EF47CC. So that is what is actual address which is shown here also. But the thing is, it is not printing it in hexadecimal directly. We are printing it using percentage P. That's why it is first indicating that it is an hexadecimal value. And the unused bits are being paired. The unused bits are being paired with the upper cases, the last one. Clear, right? With sign magnitude form, it actually converts it into this particular form. But we are interested in the address. So the address part is 6EEF47CC. So you can see here. That's why in future illustrations, I'll be using percentage X. Fine. Okay. So now we have successfully seen how a variable can be initialized, declared, and how I can actually fetch the address of that particular variable, either using ampersand n, and how can I display that using percentage X or percentage P. Coming to pointers, let us go for declaring a pointer. As I said, pointer is also a variable which can hold address. So I'll declare a pointer which can hold the address of this variable n. Since this n is an integer, my pointer should also be of type integer. So to declare pointers, we need to use star. Star indicates that in the declaration, if you find star, it indicates that it's a pointer variable. So I have declared a pointer variable. Now this pointer variable is holding garbage value or dangling value. Now I need to make that pointer variable hold the value of n. So how will I do it? I should write Pn is equal to address of n. So this is how I can actually do it. What I'm doing here is I'm telling my pointer variable Pn to hold the address of the variable n. Okay. So how do we know that it is holding the address of n? How do we know it is holding the address of n? So what we'll do is we'll try for printing the value in Pn. It should print the address of n. Okay. So I'll comment that line with percentage P. Okay. So for printing address, I'll use address of n, and in bracket I'll write true pn. So that we'll come to know when we see the output. And I'm not using ampersand n, I'm using pn. So if you can see here, I've not used ampersand n. I'm telling what is the value in pn, you show me. So pn is holding the address of n. So it should give me the same output as the previous line. So we'll run this particular program. Yes, see here. Address of n, when we used address operator is this one, and address of when we assigned it to a pointer and then displayed the pointer. Both are one and the same. So this is the concept of pointer. A pointer can hold an address of another variable where actually some data is kept. So pointers are meant to hold addresses where some data are kept. Okay, now what is the use of pointers? What I can do is, with the help of pointer only, I can print the value of n. So how will I do it? So we'll see it here. I've added here another sentence, value of n, and then I'll write in bracket, it's through the pointer which we are printing. So through pn we are printing it, and I'm not using n here, I'm using pn. So if I just write pn, it's holding address. So I need to tell my compiler, whatever pn is holding, that's an address, you go to that address and fetch the value. So we call this as dereferencing, and the operator used is star. So this process is called dereferencing using operator star. So you can see the different uses of the symbol star. A character star is having multiple uses. In arithmetic, it is multiplication. In declaration, it indicates a pointer variable. While accessing the values, it is dereferencing operator. So what I'm telling in this line is, to my compiler, whenever it sees a star and a variable name, and if it is not a declaration, it comes to know that it is dereferencing. The meaning of dereferencing is, go to pn, you will find an address and go to that address and get the value. So indirectly, I'm telling go to the address stored in pn and get the value. So that process is actually called as dereferencing in C. And the operator used for dereferencing is star. So now we'll see whether we are getting the same answer. So first two lines should be giving the same answer, and next two lines should be giving the same answer. First two lines are giving the value, and the next two lines are actually giving me the address. So we'll run. Okay, you can see here, I'm getting the same answer. So I'm printing the value of n once directly through n, and another time through the pointer which has held its address. And this we have already explained, how a pointer holds an address of a particular variable here. So this is actually a concept of pointers. How do you access the value of pointers? Or how do you store the address of a normal variable in a pointer? Okay, now whatever changes I do in n, it's directly applied to pn also. So we'll do the change and we'll let me know. I'll make n is equal to 9, and let me go for printing the value of n through pn. I'm printing the value of n through pn, and I'll also print the value of n through n also directly. Okay. So if you can see here, I've just changed it through n, but the changes is applied to pn also, because pn is not a copy of n. Pn is actually holding the address of n. So whatever I do changes to n, through pn also, I should see the same changes. So you can see here, the value of n is 9, and the value of pn through n is also 9. Now let us see, if I change through pn, will it change n? So what I'll do is dereferencing pn is equal to 19. And now let me go for printing the values. Now what happened is, I did not change through n, I actually changed it through pn. So is it changing n also? Obviously it has to change n, because pn is not a separate copy. Pn is actually holding the address of n. So let me run this particular code. So you can see here, my n is also 19, and n through pn is also 19. So this is actually the concept. So what we understood through pointer is, using pointers, we can actually share, and any changes done using the shared pointer variable, the change is applied to the actual variable also. So you have to be very careful. So any changes I do through n, through star pn I'm getting the changes, and any changes I do through dereferencing, that is through star pn, the change is applied to n also. So this is a basic concept of pointer. Okay. Now what we will see is, we'll see double pointers. What do you mean by double pointers? As the name only says, double pointer, it's a pointer to a pointer. The meaning of that is, double pointer holds the address of a pointer. So I'll write quickly the definition here. Double pointer holds the address of a pointer. So we'll see how do we declare double pointers. And this we have done it in 2 lines. I can also do it in single line. So if I'm doing it in single line, I should be writing it like this: int star pn is equal to ampersand n. So you can see here I've done it in single line. So what I'll do is, I'll run this with single line and we'll comment these 2 things with 2 lines. But you can do it in 2 lines also, or you can do it in single line also. It is one and the same. Okay. So I've done it in single line. So we'll quickly run this so that we'll see the output. There is no change. Okay. There is no change. All the codes which we have done, all are getting executed. So I can do it in either single line, or I can do it in 2 lines, declaring a pointer and initializing. So this process is actually called as declaring a pointer, and this process is called as initializing a pointer. So these are the 2 concepts, and I can do it in single line, declaration and initialization together. And initialization in single line. Okay, so now we'll come to the concept of double pointer. So you can see here the pointer variable is pn. So as I said, the double pointer is made to hold the address of pn. So what I'll do is, how to declare double pointer. Since it is a double pointer, I need to be using double operator star. So the character symbol star has to be used 2 times. I'll write pointer to pn. So I'll write the name as ppn is equal to address of pn. So you can see here, pn is holding address of n, ppn is holding address of pn. That means ppn is a double pointer which holds the address of another pointer pn. It holds the address of another pointer pn. So it is a double pointer. So ppn is a double pointer. Okay. So now we'll see whether it is holding the address of pn. So how will we see that is, first we need to know what is the address of pn. So what I'll do here is, I'll print the address of pn. So how do we print the address of anything? We have seen it here. We'll copy paste the same codes. Okay. So address of pn. Okay. So we are printing address of pn. So I should be writing ampersand pn. And the address of pn should be same when I print ppn also. So what I'll do here is, okay. So here I'll print address of pn, but I'll be printing it through ppn. So percentage x, I don't want ampersand. Okay. So these 2 lines should be giving me the same answer. These 2 lines should be giving me the same answer. Okay. As we have multiple printf statements, it is confusion to understand which output is for which line. So what we can do quickly is, I'll name the output lines. So I'll write this particular line as 1:, so that we'll come to know it's a first line. And we'll write this as 2:, and we'll write this particular line as 3:, so that when we see the output, we can understand, okay, this is a 4th line output, this is a 5th line output. Only for understanding the output, I'm naming the printf statements with these line numbers. Okay, 6th line output, and then 7th line output. Okay, 8th line output. So while explanation also, it would be easy for me to tell that, okay, compare 8th and 9th line output like that. So it is 9th line. So this is 10th line. Okay, so we have named our printf statements also. Now the output of 5 and 6 line should be same. What is 5th line? It is telling address of my pointer variable. What is sixth line telling? It is also telling address of my pointer variable, but it is telling through the double pointer ppn. So we'll run and we'll see whether fifth and sixth line are giving the same answer. Okay, so you can see here my fifth and sixth line are giving me the same answer. So this is what is a concept of double pointer. Why do we want double pointers now? So what is the use of double pointer? So see here, the double pointer is actually holding address of my pointer pn. That means through the double pointer, I can actually get the address of n also. So how will I do that? Fine. Okay, so see how will I be doing that? Okay, I'll print here. It is ppn and I'll be printing star. Okay, listen carefully, and this line I'll change it as I'll change it as, okay, the last line was 10, so I'll change it as 11. So see the 11th line, what it is telling? It's telling address of n through, not pn, through ppn. So what I'm telling to my compiler is go to ppn, whatever address you have, go there and fetch its value. So what ppn is having? ppn is having actually pn. ppn is having actually pn's address. So it goes to pn and fetches the value. And what is there in pn? In pn, you have the address of n. So the line number 3, 4, and 11 all should print the same answer. So see carefully, line number 3, 4, and 11, all three of them should print the same answer. So we'll see whether it is doing. Okay, so you can see here 3, 4, and 11. All the three lines have to be giving me the same answer. So this is sharing a particular variable into two levels. Single pointer is one level and double pointer is another level. So through ppn, I can actually get the address of n. Now one more question arises. Can we get the value of n through ppn? Yes. Since we can get the address of n through ppn, we can also get the value of n through ppn. So we'll copy paste this line and then I'll edit it. Okay, we'll make this line as 12. So value of n through ppn. So you can see here, single star will actually give me one level of dereferencing. So one level of dereferencing will fetch the value of pn. So if I want two level of dereferencing, I should write 2 stars and I should be writing ppn. So see carefully, what is the use of 2 stars? I'll write comment here. What is the use of 2 stars? The compiler looks it like this. First star, it goes for evaluating the first line. So it does like this. What is star ppn holding? So you can see here, star ppn actually holds the address of n. So star ppn is nothing but the address of variable n. So what I have written star. So star ppn is actually nothing but pn. So star ppn is nothing but pn. And what is star pn? As you know here, what is star pn? It is n. So this will give me n. So this is called two level of dereferencing. In the first level, I'm getting star pn. And in the second level, I'm getting n. So this is indirectly accessing the value of n through double dereferencing. So you can see here, star ppn, I'll explain once again. So I'll split it into first star, I'll keep it outside. Second star, I'll keep it in a bracket. So what is the value of star ppn? Star ppn, as you know, it gives pn. That we have already seen here in this line. Address of n. You can obtain through pn and you can obtain through star ppn. So star ppn is equal to pn. Then what is star pn? So star pn is equal to n. So that is what I have written. So now line number 1, 2, and 12 should be giving me the same answer. What is the answer? The value of n. Should be giving me the value of n. So we'll see that. Line number 1, 2, and 12 should be giving the same 7. Okay, so where is 1, 2, and 12? Here I go with 1, 2, and 12. So you can see 1, 2, and 12 are giving me the same answer, 7. Okay, now we'll see changing n It's changing star pn also, or will it change star star ppn also? Obviously it has to change. Why? Because it's through pointers. Okay. So see here, now I'll change the line number to 13 because it's the 13th line which we are illustrating. So your line number 7, 8 and 13 should all give me the answer 9. What is I'm doing here? I'm actually accessing when n, once through n, another time through single level pointer pn, another time through double level pointer ppn, and all the three lines will actually give me the same value of n. So 7, 8 and 13 should give me the same answer, n equal to 9. 7, 8 and 13. So you can see here 7, 8 and 13 all are giving me the same answer, 9. So we'll see with the star ppn also once. We'll copy paste this line and I'll put this line here. So what happens here now? I'm changing through pn, and we have seen that it changes n also. Now we'll see whether it is changing star star ppn also. It has to obviously change because it's pointers. So line number 9, 10, and sorry, it is not 13. I should have changed it to 14, but we'll see now. Last three lines should be giving me the same answer. See here, 19, 19, and 19. So we'll change the line number so that it is not confusing when you illustrate. So I'll run once again. So 9, 10, and 14 should give me the same answer, 19. Yes. So you can see here line number 9, 10, and 14 will be giving me the same answer, 19. So now what we will do is we'll try to actually change through star star ppn. I'll change the value to 91. So I have not changed the value of n. I've changed the value through star star ppn. And we'll see whether printing these three lines give me the same answer, 91. Okay. So we'll rename these lines. So it is line number 15, line number 16, and then we'll have line number 17. So 15, 16, and 17 should give me the same answer, that is 91. So we'll run and we'll see. Okay, so last three lines should give me the answer, 91. So you can see here 15, 16, and 17th line are actually giving me the answer, 91. Why? Because I've changed through star ppn. So this is the use. Two level of referencing we have done. So using star ppn, star ppn also, we can change the value of n. We can change it using star pn also, or we can directly change it using n. So all the three are actually referring to the same variable n. So hope this concept of double pointer and single pointers were clear to you. I've given multiple print statements so that you can pause the video, slow down the video, and run this particular codes n number of times until you get verified and rectified with the doubt what you have on pointers. These are very basic concepts of pointers which we have shown in this particular example. Okay. Further moving with the pointers, we'll see how do we use pointers. What is the use of pointers? So as I said, pointer is used for sharing. So we'll see how do we share pointers, and through the functions, we'll try to see the use of pointers. Okay. So proceeding further, we'll see the use of pointers through functions. What I'll do here is I'll write a code through the function where we can actually illustrate with the pointer what is the difference, and without pointer what is the difference. Okay. I have a variable int n is equal to 9. So I have a variable int n is equal to 9. So I'll just print the value of that n. So printf value of n. Since it is an integer, we use %d \n, and then I'll print the value of n. I'll put a semicolon, and I'll name this print line as 1 so that we can clearly understand the output. Then I'll write a function fun1 I'll write, and to which I'll pass n. Okay. After executing that function, I'll again go for printing the value of n, and it is line number 2. And here I'll print the value of n. So now I need to write the function. So we'll write declaration first. Since it is not returning anything, it's a void function. So function 1, and it takes an integer argument. This is called function declaration. It is function declaration. Okay, now I have to define that particular function. So I'll go for defining the function void function1. It takes an integer argument, so I can give any name. So I'll be giving a. Okay, so what I'll do inside that function is I'll increase the value of a by 2. So I'll do a equal to a plus 2. Very simple. I've done. Clear? I've taken passed n. N was initially 9, so I passed it here. And when I pass into a, the a value of a will be 9 because n is 9, and then I'm increasing it, and then I'm coming here and printing the value of n once again. So what is the output? First time the line 1 should give me value as 9. Second, it goes to the function where it has changed the value of n through a, that is, it has become 11. Will it print 11 in the second line, or will it print 9 in the second line? So we'll run and we'll see. It should print 9 in the second line also. Okay. Okay, there is a spelling mistake. I think I've used capital V. Okay, it's here. C is case sensitive, so be careful with these errors. Whenever you get an error, you'll come to know. It's telling that I don't know Vivo ID. Don't get confused. It doesn't know capital V O ID. It knows small Vivo ID. Now if I run this program, it is correct. Okay, so you can see here both 1 and 2 lines have given me the value 9. I've changed the value here, but still they're giving me the answer 9. Why? Because whatever changes I do in A, it is not shown to this particular n. It has become a copy of n. Now A is a copy of n. So whatever changes I do on A, that is not applied to n. Okay. Now let me write another function. So function 2. So see carefully. To that function 2, I'm passing address of n. To that function, I'm passing address of n. Okay. So let me write the definition of function 2. Okay. So what is function 2? If you see here, from the main, I'm passing address. So if I'm passing address, I cannot use a normal variable. I should use a pointer. So I'll make my a as a pointer. So since I'm using a pointer, in order to access the value, we should go for dereferencing. Dereferencing is nothing but writing star. So why did I go for pointer a? Why? Because what I'm passing to my function 2 is an address. So when I'm passing an address, I need to have a pointer variable to catch that address. So in function 2, I'm passing an address. That's why in the definition of function 2, I have a pointer. Now this is a definition. I should write the declaration. So declaration goes here. Okay. So how do we write declaration? It's just a pointer variable required and a semicolon. This is how I actually do declaration. Why do we do declaration? Because to tell the compiler that these two functions definitions are written after main. Either we can write both definitions before main and then we don't want declarations. But if you're defining the functions after main, you need to have declarations. Now I'll run the program. Now you see the output. I'll comment this function 1. No change in function 2 and function 1, except that in function 2, I'm passing the address of n to the variable a, which is a pointer. And in function 1, I'm directly passing the n. Clear? Okay, here a is not a pointer. A is not a pointer variable. And in my second function, a is a pointer variable. Okay, in this function, a is a pointer variable. Okay, I'll run this program. You can see the difference here. Line number 1 give me the answer 9, but line number 2 give me the answer 11. I did not change the value of n here. I passed the address of n, and someone in function 2 who took the address changed the value of that particular member through dereferencing, and that changes are seen everywhere. So this is what is called as sharing. I have shared the address of n to a pointer variable called a. So now whatever the changes a does, wherever he does the changes, the change will be known to n also. So this particular line, we call it as pass by reference. Pass by reference. And this particular function 1, we call it as pass by value. It is also called as pass by reference or pass by address. What do you mean by pass by reference? I'm passing the address of the variable n. What do you mean by pass by value? I'm passing the value directly, what is there in n. So if I do pass by value, it copies the value of n to a. And whatever changes a does, it's not shown to n. But if I pass the address of n, and a is holding the address of n, now whatever changes I do in a, that is applied to n. So this particular line, what here it does, it is similar to writing int star a is equal to ampersand n. You can see here it is int star a, and to int star a, from where I'm getting the value, I'm getting the value from ampersand n. So that is nothing but int star a is equal to ampersand n. So this is very, very important concept in pointers: pass by value and pass by reference. I hope I was clear in explaining what do you mean by pass by value and what do you mean by pass by reference. Now we have seen how can we pass an address to a function. So in my next code snippet, we'll see how can we get an address from a function. So in the next code snippet, we'll see how can we get an address from a function. Okay, so I'll just include a comment line here. Passing pass by value and pass by reference illustration. Okay, just for our understanding, I've written a comment line so that whoever sees this particular program, you can pause it and you'll come to know what this program is actually doing. Fine. Okay, it is pass by value and pass by reference illustration. How can I pass a value and how can I pass a address? Okay, next we'll be seeing how a function can return a pointer. Okay, we'll see it in a separate screen. I'll change the compiler to C. Okay. So what here I'll do here is I'll declare a pointer variable star PA, and then I'll make PA is equal to function. PA is equal to function, and then I'll go for printing what is the address getting stored in PA. So I'll tell value of PA. Since it is an address, because it's a pointer, I'll write percentage %x, just PA I'll write. I'll explain once again why did I write percentage %x. PA is actually a pointer variable. So this function should return an address, and that address should be stored in PA. Okay. And how to dereference it? That means how to find the address value of that address. Clear? Okay. Value of address stored in PA. So that is an integer. Why? Because a pointer is of integer type. That means it is holding the address of an integer variable only. So how do I get it? Dereferencing. Okay. And these two lines are in main. So let me just write M1. That means main's first line. And I'll write M2, which means main's second line, so that we can understand our output. So if you can see here, I have a pointer variable PA, which should be getting an address from this particular function fun. And that particular address is given to PA. Now PA holds the address. So how do I print the address? Using percentage %x. And what is there in that address? I should be using dereferencing. So that is using star PA. Okay, we'll write the function directly here. We'll not write declaration. We'll write the function itself. So it's not a void function. The function is actually returning an integer pointer. So what I should do? Int star. So see here carefully, int star. Why int star? Because it's returning an address. And since it is returning a pointer, I should be writing int star. Okay, here what I'll do is I'll write int a is equal to 7. Clear? Okay, and then I'll print two statements here. Control C. I'll print, it is inside the function. So I'll write F1, value of A. It is an integer. So I'll write percentage D and I'll write A. And then I'll write address of A. So address of A, it is a pointer. So we'll write percentage X and we'll write ampersand A. So listen carefully here, a minute difference. What we have done in this particular function is, in this particular function, there is a variable A. I'm printing its value and I'm printing its address using address operator. And then see what I'm returning. I'm returning the address of A. So if you see here, I'm returning address of A. How do I know I'm returning address of A? Because I've used address operator. So I'll write the statement here, returning address of variable A. Okay, so whatever address I have written here, that should be stored to PA. So this line, I can write it as PA is equal to ampersand A. It's same. Why? Because what is this function bringing to me? That function is actually bringing me ampersand A. So I have just written instead of that function ampersand A in the comment. Why? Because this line is doing only that much. Okay, now we'll run this program. There is a logical error. There is a runtime error in this program. So what is it? We'll see when we run this particular program. Okay, so we'll run the code. So you can see here, as I said, there is a runtime error. We have to be very careful with these kinds of errors in pointers. Very, very difficult to solve because it's not telling what's a mistake. It's just telling runtime error. Where have I committed a mistake? So these memory errors are very crucial in solving. So to understand this, you should be knowing little bit concept of memory. So quickly, I'll brush up the concept of memory. There are two kinds of memory in our computer, stack memory and heap memory. All the static variables are actually in a stack memory. So when I write a function, the function is getting a separate stack for it. So how many functions are there? There are two functions. So function will get one stack, main will get one stack. So there are two stack. And there is a rule. Whenever we write a function, we call a function, the function is active. So the variable will be active. Whenever we end the call of a function, so you can see here, I'm ending the call of the function. The next line, whatever variables were there in this particular function are inactive. They have expired. So the function goes out of the scope. So when the function goes out of the scope, automatically the stack is erased. So that's why it is not able to fetch PA and star PA. So what I should do is, I should make someone this function. In this function, I should make someone who is not local, who is global. Clear? So what I'll do here is, I'll use a keyword which makes him global. So what I've done here, I've used static keyword. What do you mean by static? If you write any variable as static, it gets a global scope. What do you mean by global scope? This variable A is executed only once in this particular program, and the death of this A happens only when I end the program. If I don't write static, so I'll write two lines, without static. If I write without static, this A is a local variable. So the local variables will die when I reach the end of a function. Excuse me. So local variables actually die when I reach the end of a function. So that's why you can see here I have called the function. It successfully run the function and stores the value in PA. Then the function will die. So when the function expires, all its local variables are garbage collected, erased. That's why you are getting a logical error, because the variable was going out of the scope when the function was ended. So in order to make it in scope, what I made is, I did it a global scope. I gave him a global scope. And how did I give a global scope? Using the keyword static. So it was giving me a runtime error. Now see the difference. I'm getting the answer. So if you see, what is the value of A? 7. And next line is for address. So you can see here value of A is 7 and the next line is address. And that address is stored in PA. So that's why PA is also showing the same address. You can see here, it is showing the same address. And since it is passed by reference from the function to main, that's why using PA, you can get the same value of So this is how you can return pointers from a function. You have to be very careful when you're returning pointers to a function, because you would have missed writing static or making this a in a global scope. If you miss that, you will get a runtime error. Why? Because you should understand the concept of stack memory in your computer. It is into core IT. What do you mean by stack? What do you mean by stack frame? How each function gets a stack and all. So I'll not get into that part of the memory. I'll just make you remember this much. Whenever you are returning a pointer from a function, make sure that particular variable is not in a local scope. Change the scope of the variable. So I'll be writing here, bring scope of A to global. So in this line, A has local scope. What do you mean by local scope? It's applied to only this particular function. What do you mean by global scope? It is having scope throughout the whole program. So it ends only when I end the program. So since it was having local scope when I write just int a, that's why after this particular line, it was not known to anyone. That's why in these two lines, it was throwing runtime error. So I'll show you the runtime error once again. What happens if I don't write static int a? If I just write int a, the program is perfectly fine. There is no wrong for the first time, whoever is understanding it. Tracing also perfectly correct. Why? Because the function is returning an address and I've written int star and there is a pointer to collect the address. But the problem is with respect to computer memory, how memory is given to each functions. And to understand that, I'll run this particular program and I'll show you the logical error, a runtime error. So you can see here, there is a runtime error. And some of these compilers don't even tell what's the runtime error. That's why it is very challenging. So how do I overcome this particular runtime error? I should bring the variable a into global scope. So how do I bring that into a global scope? Using a keyword static, which makes it to a global scope. And if I run it using static, I'm not getting any error. I'm getting my answer. So you can see here, I'm getting my answer. Perfect answer, what I was supposed to get. So whatever changes I do in PA, it's applied to A. Whatever changes I do in A, it's applied to P. So this is how you can return pointers from a function. So I'll write here, illustrating how to return pointers from function. Be careful, only difference is bringing it to a global scope. Fine? Okay. And most of you may tell, so then why was it not required in the previous program? Because in the previous program, it was not ending, because my n is in main. And till the end of the program, it is having scope. Why? Because main is a function which never loses the scope till the end of the program. That's why I did not make n as static, because throughout the program, it is having a scope, because n was declared in main. That's why I did not make it as static int n. But in this current code, what we have written, a is not in main, a is there in function. So that function has left its scope whenever I end calling that function. So in the second line, it was having scope. When it came to the third line, it lost its scope. So in this particular line, 15th line, which you are seeing here, this particular function is not having scope. Why? Because it was finished, completed, running. So that's why it was throwing a logical error. Okay. So we'll move on to the next topic. Pause the video and rewind it and look it into multiple times if you're having any problem in the concepts. And I'll be sharing my email ID at the end. Any problem, any queries or any suggestions, feel free to write to that particular email ID. The next concept which we are seeing in pointers are with respect to dynamic memory allocation. So to understand that, we'll run a piece of code using arrays and then we'll come back to what do you mean by dynamic memory allocation. Okay. Running an array code. So I can have an array. So I'll be declaring 25 elements. Fine. Okay. How do I take the value? First, I should be asking a user, you enter the number of elements do you want. So we usually take n. Fine. Okay. And then we need a for loop for running it. Fine. Okay. So we can write a scanf to read the value of n. But here what I'll be doing, I'll be directly reading it through here. Fine. Okay. How will I write scanf? Okay, we'll do it in this fashion itself. Printf, enter number of elements. Okay, enter number of elements \n, and you have to be very careful. What is it? Your n should be less than or equal to 25 only. Why less than or equal to 25? Why? Because we have only reserved how many rooms? 25 rooms of integers. So that's why we have to give a n which is less than or equal to 25. So scanf, or else it throws a memory out of bound error. So percentage %d, since n is an integer, we'll write ampersand n. This is how we actually do array program. First, we should declare what is the size which we want. So what we are telling my computer, total 25 elements required, each of size 2 bytes. So what my computer does, it gives me a room in the name of A where the size of the room is 50 bytes. Why 50 bytes? I want 25 elements of 2 bytes each. So 25 into 2 is 50. So total it is 50 bytes, and the starting address is stored in A. Clear? Okay. Starting address in A. So this is what that particular line does. So my compiler automatically sees that it is an array of integers. So it checks the size what he wants. So I want 25 elements. So what it does, it reserves 25 rooms, each of size 2 bytes. So total 50 bytes, and in the name of A. And then I'm entering how many elements I want. So then I can write a for loop for initializing. So how will we write for loop? For I is equal to 0, I less than n, and then I plus plus. Why I less than n? Because my index starts with 0 and goes till 24 if I have n equal to 25. Fine. Okay. So these are basic concepts. Assuming you know this, or else get back to the concept of arrays and then look into this particular video session. Okay. So I will initialize the value of that array. So a of I is equal to, I'll give him the value of I plus 1. That means first element should get 1, second element will get 2, third element will get 3, fourth element will get 4. I have not read the values from keyboard. Directly I'm giving static values. So I want to print the array elements. How will I do? I'll write a print statement here, printf array, array elements. I'm very particular about spellings also. Array elements are \n. Okay, so array elements are, I'm just writing one print statement. Then I'll write the array elements, printing line for array elements. All are integers, so I should write printf %d, and each element should be separated by a space. So I'll be writing \t, and then I'll be writing a of I. This is how I access the array elements. Fine. Okay. So it should print me the array elements. Okay. So in this particular IDE which I'm using, CodeChef, I have to give inputs like this. I should tick custom input. Those who can use it, you can use. Okay, then I should tell how many inputs are there in my program. As you can see, there is only one scanf in my program, reading the number of elements. So I'll give input as 10. So what I'm telling, I want n as 10. And I should not cross 25. If I cross 25, it's an error. It's a runtime error. Clear, right? Because I've only reserved 25 rooms. So I'm telling input as 10, and now we'll run the program. So you can see here, for input 10, what is the answer? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Why? Because when input is 10, n is 10. So 0 to 9. So a of 0 will be 0 plus 1, that is 1. A of 1 will be 1 plus 1, that is 2. A of 2 will be 2 plus 1, that is 3. So this is how I initialized, and I'm printing. So perfect answer we have obtained for 10. So what happens if I give input as more than 25? So we'll see that error also. Let me give the input as 30 and run the program. So you can see here, it gave me the numbers. It did not throw me an error. How did it give the number? Because in this online compiler, the continuous space were there to give rooms of 30 elements also. Though we requested 25, there were space in this particular online computer which could give me 30 elements, but normally it's an error. So if I give very large number here, fine. For example, I'll be giving, I don't know how much space this particular compiler has, online space, how much it is actually reserved. So we'll see. See here, it is a runtime error. Why? Because I requested a very huge space, but I reserved only 25 rooms. But if I write 26 also, it is actually wrong. In this compiler, it is showing because it is having continuous room space, which is free. But actually it is wrong. If I've taken 25, I can maximum utilize only 25. That's the concept of static initialization. So you can see here, if I utilized some other number other than 25, larger than 25, it throws me a error. So my input is this one, but I've reserved only 25 rooms and I'm requesting 3000 rooms. So it is an error. But if I've reserved 3100 rooms, it doesn't throw an error. So we'll see that. So hope this much room is available in this particular compiler. Okay, now you see here, it is not an error. It has given all the numbers till 3000. Okay, we'll see. Yes, 3100. But if I reserve only 25 rooms, see the difference here. If I reserve only 25 rooms and if I request 3100, it is showing error. See, I requested 25 rooms and I'm telling I want 3100, then it is an error. But if I reserve 3100 rooms, then it is not an error. See, I'm not getting an error. What is this then? Why is it a problem? The problem is, see, I've reserved 3100. Assume that I'm giving input as 5. I'm giving input as 5 and I'm running the program. The program is not wrong because I've reserved 3100 rooms and I'm using only 5 rooms in that. So we'll run this code. Successfully, we should get the answer. Yes, we are getting the answer. Perfect, no wrong in this. But what is the problem? The problem is I have wasted 3095 rooms because I utilized only 5 rooms. I reserved 3100 rooms, but I utilized only 5 rooms. That means 3095 rooms I have wasted. Then how will I come to know how much rooms I want? Why? Because input I'm giving from keyboard. So who knows how much input I'm giving? So there is a technique based on number of rooms you want, that much memory only you can allocate. That particular concept is called dynamic memory allocation. As the name says, allocating memory during runtime. That is called dynamic. Here, you're giving memory during coding time. That is called static memory allocation. Because we are reserving in the code only how much memory I want. But if I reserve the memory after looking into the value of n, that particular concept is called dynamic memory allocation. So we'll see that in the next screen. The same problem, we'll see it in the next screen. Okay, so I'll change the compiler to see, and I'll use the same piece of code so that we're not wasting time in typing. Okay. So what I'm doing it here, see, this is the static memory allocation. So I'll remove this. I'm just removing that, you can see here. And I'm making a pointer A. And this concept is called dynamic memory allocation. Dynamic memory allocation in C. Okay. And some of the functions which we are using are there in a header file. So we need to include a special header file whenever we go for dynamic memory allocation. And this is called malloc.h. And that header file has actually few functions for us. For example, it has malloc, which we are using. It has calloc. And these are some dynamic memory allocation functions which we are using in our program. Realloc. So many more functions which are there in this particular header file, but we'll be using these 4 standard functions in our code. but other header files are there with respect to solving the errors of memory allocations dynamically and all defined in this particular header file, but we'll be using only these many functions of this particular header file. So what I mean by dynamic memory allocation, so you can see here, I have not told how much memory I want. I just told there is an address which has to be stored in A, but what should be the size of A, I have not stored. So where I'll be telling after n. So see how I'll be telling, I'll tell A is equal to, the syntax is the data type of that A, that is an integer star, and the name of the dynamic memory allocation function malloc. Now I should tell how much size I want. So how many elements are there? N elements. And what is the size of each element? 2 bytes. That is 16-bit machine. But in this machine, I don't know what is the size. So what I'll do is, I'll write a code for calculating the size of integer in this machine. So that code is here. Simple. So this is called dynamic memory allocation. Dynamic memory allocation. So what I've done here is, after reading n, I'm telling my computer I want n rooms and each size is equal to size of integer. So if I tell n is equal to 10, it gives 20 by size and it stores the starting address in A. And in the next procedure is same, no change. So we'll run this code. So see the difference here in the previous code and this code, I'll show you. In the previous code, we reserved statically. So you can see here, 3100 was the room space which I actually reserved, and I'm using 5 rooms. So there is a wastage of 3095 rooms. Clear, right? Okay. And then no difference. Statically, I'm telling I want these many rooms. But in this piece of code, what we are doing is, I'm not telling how many rooms I want in the beginning. I'm telling the number of rooms is dependent on what value the user enters for n. That much room I'm reserving. See here. Okay. So let me run this program. Okay, sorry, we have not given a custom input, so it should throw me a very large infinite file. It's given a very large infinite file. Why? Because we have not given input. Excuse me. So you can see here there is a scanf. So here we need to tick custom input, and let me give the size as 10. So when I give size as 10, n is 10. So what it does, 10 into size of integer. So if it takes 2 bytes, 10 into 2, 20 bytes is given for A, and then only 20 bytes are utilized. So there is no wastage of memory space. So I'll run this and I'll show the code. So you can see the input 10 and I'm getting the answer for 10. And if I change the input for 3100 and run the program, no error. It works for 3100. That much, see, it works for 3100. So I'll bring this cursor till the end. See here, 3100. So how much I want, that much only is given to me. So this is more efficient. There is no wastage of memory. I have not reserved in the beginning only. I want 1000 rooms and all. How much is my n? That much room is enough for me. So this is what is a dynamic memory allocation in C. One thing you have to be very careful. When you tell about dynamic memory allocation in C, memory is given in heap section. I was speaking about stack and heap in the previous program when I was telling about functions. So all functions will get a separate stack. But here the memory is given in heap section. So there are different kinds of memory in your computer, primary, secondary memory, and other internal categories of memories like heap memory and stack memory when it comes to a piece of program. So some parts of your code get stored in stack and some parts of your code get stored in heap. So in the heap section, usually dynamic memory allocation codes are stored. And in the stack section, the stack memory, your local variables and all those things are actually stored. There are different fragments also are on the memory. It's a theoretical concept. So you can Google it out and search. In case if you want contents of that particular concept, what is the computer memory, how our functions are stored. When I write a function, which part gets stored in heap, which part gets in stack, just comment it or write to my email ID. I'll send you the theoretical concepts to your required platform. Fine, you can actually comment to this particular video or you can actually send a mail to me. I'll send you the theoretical copies regarding to memory. It's completely theory, so I'm avoiding in this particular tutorial. Just remember, dynamic memory allocation, the memory is given in heap section. So what is heap section? What is stack section? It's a theoretical concept. In case if you're interested, I have certain study materials which I can send you. If you could ping me to my email or through the comment section of this particular video. Okay, further proceeding, as we have understood now what is malloc. So we'll see other features also. Now, one thing you have to be remembering, I've dynamically reserved some space in A. It's my duty to free it after I use. So what we usually do is we write free A. So this code is necessary when we are using our static IDEs and all, or else simply A will be reserved with that much rooms in the heap section. So your heap section will be overloaded. So it is our duty to free that particular memory once we have used. But one thing you have to remember, once if I free that, it will become a dangling pointer. These are not errors. These are actually handled by your operating systems. Nowadays in modern IDEs, your operating systems are smart enough to handle dangling pointers and these memory leaks. But as a good programmer, it's our duty to do our job of releasing the pointer after use. So what do you mean by dangling pointer? Our A was having some memory. I removed the memory, but still A is holding some garbage value. So I should make my A hold null value. So this completes my code. This is an effective coder's rule that you should free the memory space requested from the heap, and also you should make the pointer hold null value so that it doesn't hold a garbage value, creating some error in the later section. Fine. So as a good programmer, have a habit of freeing the dynamic memory which we have requested through free command. So very easy, free and the name of the pointer variable which we have used. So the variable which we have used for malloc, calloc, or realloc is A. So that A name you should write, and then I should make that pointer equal to null. Because if I don't write this particular line, it becomes a dangling pointer. It's not an error. It is easily handled by your operating system and these modern IDEs. But have a habit of doing these two lines whenever you write dynamic memory allocation codes. So if I run this particular code now, however, it was not showing error without these codes also. Now also it doesn't throw me an error. It gives me the answer. Okay, I've used colon instead of semicolon. That's why it is throwing an error. Don't get confused. I'll replace it with semicolon. Okay, so now I'm getting the answer. So this is what is a concept. And here I need not write n should be less than or equal to 25 because I can have any number of elements. Because if I write 100, I'm getting 100 rooms. If I write 200, I'm getting 200 rooms. But in the previous program, if I write 100, I'm getting only 100 rooms. I cannot increase later, or I cannot decrease. I cannot increase it later. However, if I decrease, I'm wasting memory. But if I increase, it's showing me an error. But here, if I request, for example, 99 rooms, I'm exactly getting 99 rooms. So if you want, I'll run this. And we'll see the output. Okay, see here, I'm getting 99. Because I've requested only 99. So that's what is a beauty of dynamic memory allocation. Very interesting concept. Okay, so now we'll see calloc, realloc, and then finally we'll wind up the session. Very easy. When we have learned about malloc, calloc is very easy. Just a small change in the syntax. I'll do it in a separate screen. Okay, we'll change the compiler to C. See the difference here. I've used malloc. I'll comment that line. So now I'll use calloc. Only change in syntax. Both are doing the same job. Okay. So the data type here is not, sorry, the function here is not malloc, it is calloc. What is the difference is, see here I'm writing n into size of int, but here it takes two arguments. The first argument is number of elements and the second argument is size of each element. Other than that, there is no difference between malloc and calloc. Remember the difference. Malloc takes one argument, total size what you want. But calloc takes two arguments, total rooms what you want and what is the size of individual room. So that's why what we are doing in malloc, we were giving total size as a multiplication of number of rooms into size of each room. But since here it is taking two different parameters, I need not multiply and give the answer. I'm directly giving n comma size of int. What is the meaning of it? Number of rooms is n, size of each room is size of int. Rest the answer is same. So we'll run and we'll see there is a custom input. So I'll give the input as 10. No change in the output. Malloc and calloc are one and the same except a small change in the syntax. So you can see here I'm getting the answer for 10. So I'll change the input to 1000 and run the program. I should be getting it for 1000 without any error. So you can see here I'm getting it for 1000 without any error. So this is the concept of kelloc. So only difference is in the syntax and the name of the function which I'm using, dynamic memory allocation using kelloc, and it takes 2 arguments, but malloc was taking only 1 argument. Okay. Now the concept of realloc. Free, however, we have learned what do you mean by free. It's our duty as a coder to free the dynamic memories which we have requested. So what do you mean by realloc case? Now we have reserved only n rooms. In your program, somewhere you feel that you should increase the size of n, that is n is equal to n plus 20. What I did, I took n, for example, assume n is 1000 here. Now in between what I did, n is equal to n plus 20. But we have only how many rooms? 1000. We did not allocate extra rooms. And then now I'm running this code. Okay, we'll see here. Control V. So listen carefully what is I'm trying to tell here. I'll write a comment. Increasing size. I've increased the size, but my memory is still only for what is n, first n. For example, if n was 100, my memory is only for 100. But in between my program, I increased the size to 120. That means there are extra 20 rooms for which there is no space. So now if I run this program, it gives me an answer, but it gives me an error also. Okay, so see here, it is giving me an answer, but it is also telling me a runtime error. Why it is giving answer? Because in my online IDE, I am having enough space. So it could tell me the answer. It gave me the answer. If you see, it gave me the answer. From 1000, it gave me the answer to 1020. First, it gave 1000 for, because n was 1000. Next, I increased the space to 20. So it gave 1020. It was not showing any error, output in error in output, but it throws a runtime error. You can see here. So why is this runtime error coming? It is telling that you requested for 1000 and in between you changed it to plus 20. Now where should I give you the 20? Now, however, I gave you the answer because I had enough space. But had it been your static compiler, it would have not given you the answer only. But here it is having space, so it gave you the answer, but it also told that it is an error. So you can see here, clearly it is telling an error. See, invalid next size. Initial size was something, but next time when you gave a size, it is invalid because you reserved only for 1000. According to you, n is 1000, so we have only 1000 reserved spaces. But in between, you are changing your n value to n plus 20, and you are not increasing the space. So that's why to solve these kind of problems, so to remove these kind of errors, what I'll do is, whenever I change my size, I tell the new size is equal to realloc what was the size given to old pointer A, comma, and this particular new size. What is new size you want? So what is new size? My new n into size of int. That's all. See the realloc. What realloc does, it takes 2 arguments. What is your old pointer? What is old pointer? A only. I'm keeping the same name only, A only. And what is the new size you want? New n into size of integer. So if I write and execute this particular line, that this error what it was showing will go. So we'll see that. Run this. Okay, see here, no error. The runtime error was gone because I increased the size using a special statement called realloc. So realloc can be used for resizing. I can also decrease the size. I can also increase the size. No problem. Clear, right? But the problem comes when I'm increasing. If I decrease the size, the problem doesn't come because however I'm having enough space. If I use less number of space, it is wastage of memory. That's it. But to avoid that, we have to go for resizing whenever we don't want that much memory. If you want extra memory or if you want less memory, you have to go for resizing. And how will you resize? You can resize using which statement? Realloc. So realloc is used for resizing the memory. Clear? I hope This gives justification to dynamic memory allocation concept. I've done enough of dynamic memory allocation illustrations in using various quotes. Go back and run the video multiple times if you're having any confusions. And if most of you feel that you want the codes which I've executed, so I'll download the codes and keep. In case if you want these codes which I've executed, instead of typing, if you want to run these codes and see, I can send these codes to your mail if you send me your mail address. And you can also comment in the comment section of this particular video in case if you want these codes which I've executed. I'll be sending my email ID. I'll be writing my email ID here. You can take down to get back to me in case of any queries. Feel free to give suggestions also, queries and suggestions. So any suggestions if you have or any queries you have, you can get back to me on this email ID. My email ID is prakyats.is@sahyadri.edu.in. So write queries, or you can also give suggestions to improve my content so that I can change or enhance my content quality in the next coming videos. So in this particular video tutorial, I'll quickly brush up the concepts which we have learned. We started with basic pointers, single pointers, double pointers, passing pointers to functions, getting pointers from the functions, dynamic memory allocations, malloc, calloc, realloc, and free. So these were the concepts which we have gone through in this particular video. It covers almost basic and bit of advanced concept of pointers. Rerun the video multiple times to know the concepts. At any point of time, if you're stuck with the code, or if you need the code which I have executed, I have downloaded and kept the codes, you can write to my email ID. I'll send you the codes. Thank you. Hope this video tutorial on pointers was effective and useful for you to understand the concept of pointers. See you in the